Hello.
I am Ryan.
And I am Zach.
And together, we are functionally
literate.
We read for fun.
And sometimes because we have
to. Today, we are going to finish our discussion of Morte d'Arthur, Book 5, which is King Arthur versus Emperor Lucius of the Roman Empire.
Bam, bam, bam.
So we discussed chapters 1 through 6 in my archaic version of the book. Today we're going to be discussing chapters 7 through 12. I specify it that way because Zach's copy is not at all like mine.
No, mine it's one chapter, Arthur and Lucius.
Yep.
And that's it. It's 20 pages.
It's just a story. Mine, way more than 20 pages. And also in 14th, 15th century English, which you can read it. That doesn't mean you'll understand it. Been taking a lot of notes. So I finished taking my notes last night. So when we get to like chapter 9 or 10, they're going to be questionable notes. I'm going to need
some not quite lucid thoughts.
A lot of fact checking from you on when we get there.
Okay.
So to recap, last episode, we talked about how Emperor Lucius demanded tribute. King Arthur said no. In fact, I'm going to conquer your lands now. And then he took himself out of the fight by fighting a giant as soon as he got to France.
On Mont Saint-Michel.
And then what did you say? It was a giant of Guy?
Of Guine.
Of Guine.
Guine.
Which is pronounced Ni.
Ni.
Giant of Ni.
Well, they are the knights who say Ni. But then there are the knights who say iki something zooey.
Gotta watch that movie.
Yeah, it's so good.
So Arthur, he took himself out of the fight by fighting a giant as soon as he got to France. And then he sent an army to tell Lucius to stop pillaging France. Lucius said no. There was a big old fight over it. Lucius lost 10,000 Romans. Arthur's losses weren't enumerated, but Sir Gawaine was injured, and there was a lot of the Emperor's men taken as prisoners, which Arthur sent to Paris in Sir Lancelot's care at the end of chapter 6. So now we're going to jump into chapter 7.
How Lucius sent certain spies in the bushment for to have taken his knights been prisoners, and how they were letted.
So, meanwhile, as all this is happening, the Emperor saw that the prisoners were being sent to Paris. So he had some knights and princes set up an ambush with 60,000 men to rescue the prisoners.
That's a massive ambush.
Fuck yeah, it is.
That's a Hannibal Barca level ambush.
That's over half the size of Columbia where we live.
Yes.
So the next morning, Sir Lancelot and Sir Cador, in charge of the guards that escorted the prisoners, they came upon a forest. Lancelot ordered some of his knights, sneaky ones, to see if the way through the forest was safe. They went in. Huh?
Smart.
Very
Gotta
smart.
do your recon.
Very much. So they went in to do their reconnaissance. They saw the ambush. They told Sir Lancelot that there were 70,000 Romans lying in wait, which means 60. 70 is 60.
Yes.
Despite the odds being 6-1 against Lancelot in sheer numbers, he waged a battle against the Romans hiding in the forest. He killed and detrenched. Detrenched means, fun fact, cut to pieces. He killed and detrenched many knights, admirals, and Saracens. Notable folks killed in the battle was the king of Liley and 3 lords, Aladuc, Herod, and Herringdale. Lancelot was so fierce and terrible in battle that the Saracens ran away, quote, as the sheep from the wolf or from the lion, end quote.
That's good. That's a metal line.
Yeah. They fought for so long, just like the last fight, that word was sent to Arthur about the battle, who readied his own men and went to assist. And, just like last time, by the time he got there, the battle was already won. I'm not sure why that's a recurring theme here.
My assumption is, one, it gives Arthur an out.
Yeah.
He is injured.
Yeah.
He probably wouldn't be all that effective. And it's like, well, he would have fought, but he was just too darn late.
He just didn't show up in time.
Gosh. But I think it's also important to illustrate the effectiveness of the individual knights of the Round Table.
Sure.
You know, this goes back to the Dragon of Many Colors. It's not just Arthur who's winning this. Lancelot is winning this war.
Yeah.
Sir Gawaine is winning this war. Sir Bors is winning this war. Sir Bedivere is winning this war, even without Arthur specifically helping.
But even so, they're doing the sensible thing and asking for help when they feel they need it.
They're being smart about it.
Yeah.
But that just more emphasizes the point that it's like Arthur's not the only competent person here.
Right.
You know, and this goes back to the ambassadors being like, their court is stacked with good noblemen.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the evidence. Noblemen are successful on the battlefield. They're smart. They think about things. They're competent.
Yeah.
And it's just showing like each of these individual knights, look, they didn't even need Arthur. They could do this without him.
So yeah, Arthur gets there. He hugs his knights. He says, "You are worthy to wield your honor. There has never been a king other than me that had such noble knights."
That's right. He's like, damn, you guys are good.
So Sir Cador says, Cador. I'm going to say Cador. I keep defaulting to that.
You say what your heart tells you.
Sir Cador says, "Sir, we fought with teamwork, and none of us failed each other. But as for skill and manliness, Sir Lancelot was legendary.
This is like the start of Lancelot's rise to being the greatest of knights.
He and his cousins performed many noble feats of war. He also relayed to Arthur in this moment that 3 of his knights had died, Sir Beryl, Sir Morris, and Sir Morrel. Or Marel? I don't know. Maurel. Never heard of the guy.
Sure.
At this news, Arthur cried. Arthur had heard of the guy. He dried his eyes with his handkerchief and said, "Your courage nearly destroyed you. Although you have lived to tell the tale, you lost no honor in the battle. It is foolish for knights to stand aside when overmatched." Lancelot and the others agreed. "For once shamed, our honor may never be recovered." So I'm curious what yours said about this, because that didn't make sense to me, that last bit. Like, I'm worried I misinterpreted that.
I can look it up exactly, but my feeling is that Arthur is saying, like, you know, nobody would have faulted you for retreating.
Right.
And I think Lancelot's rebuttal is something to the effect of, sure, but I would rather die fighting bravely because the shame of running away I would never outlive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of what he's saying. He's like, you know, you have fought with courage. That's good. But no one would fault you for retreating from 6-1 odds. And Lancelot's like, I would rather die because I wouldn't live long enough to live down the shame if I had run away.
Let's see what your book says.
Okay. When Sir Cador told Arthur the casualties they had suffered, Arthur wept bitterly and said, "You realize that your courage might have been your undoing? That often it is folly not to retreat when you find yourself fighting against overwhelming odds? And yet to retreat may also be folly," said Sir Lancelot, "for it is a shame which surely no knight can outlive." Both Sir Cador and Sir Bors agreed with Sir Lancelot.
Okay. So in this moment, Arthur's like, you were foolish to do that.
Yes.
And Lancelot was like, I would have rather died than lost my honor.
Yeah. And
Okay.
Sir Cador and Sir Bors are like, I'm with him. Death is better.
I don't know. I agree with that, but all right. I mean,
different times.
Yeah, different times. And also, I like living. But, I'm sure there are men today that would be like, no, I would rather die than
There are
lose my
things worth dying for.
honor. Yeah.
Chapter 8. How a senator told to Lucius of the discomfiture, and also of the great battle between Arthur and Lucius.
So this is, I believe, the longest chapter in this story from my version. This is the big fight.
Yeah.
So we turn our attention to a Roman senator that escaped from the second battle in the forest. He went to Emperor Lucius and told him, "Sir Emperor, I advise you to withdraw. What are you doing here? You'll win nothing in these frontiers. Except dead men?" The original wording was, "but great strokes out of all measure."
Yeah, you're just going to lose. You're just all you're winning is losses,
Yeah.
basically. Lots of loss, which is, I would say, historically accurate to expect of a Roman senator. The native Roman attitude, and by that I mean Italian, but not necessarily all Italians. It's kind of, depending on who you ask, what it means to be a native Roman is very different. But the native Roman attitude toward the frontier parts of the Roman Empire were that of lesser citizens. So even if you were like a Germanic tribe that lived in an area that was officially a part of Rome, not just a vassal state, but in the imperial territory itself, and were a citizen, you would still be looked down upon by native Romans as like, it's kind of like the difference between old money and new money. It's like, oh, you're new to the empire though. Like you're less. And so this sort of disdain for like the frontiers, like you're winning nothing on these frontiers. Like this is useless barbaric land. Get out of here.
So this senator concludes by saying, on this day, one of Arthur's knights was worth 100 of ours. So, yikes.
Which is worth twice as much as one of the giants of Guine.
That's right. That's right. Because we're equating this all by the power of what one man ought to be.
Right.
So Lucius, in response, says, "Shame on you! You speak like a coward. Your words give me more grief than all the losses I've suffered today."
Also a very historically accurate perspective of the leader of Rome to feel of the Senate of Rome.
Yeah.
They did not get along.
So instead of taking his senator's advice, he sent a king called Sir Leome, I believe. It's Leomie. Leome. He sent Sir Leome with a big fat army and ordered him to go fast in front and he would follow quickly after. Arthur was secretly warned of this and sent his people to Cessoine, a province in France. He took control of Cessouine's castles and towns from the Romans. He then commanded Sir Cador to guard the rear with the knights Lancelot, Bors, Kay, Maroc, and Marhaus. Remember Marhaus?
I do, old Marhaus.
So then Arthur divided his armies into several groups and sprinkled them around Cessoine, so his enemies couldn't escape. The emperor entered the valley of Cessoine and scanned for where Arthur or his banner might be. Presumably because if he finds the banner, maybe he'll find Arthur.
Yeah.
He was surrounded by the Britons, putting him in a position to fight or surrender. He said openly to his Romans, "Sirs, today you will fight and redeem yourselves as men. Remember how Rome dominates and rules," and this is a quote from the original text, "over all the earth and universal world." End quote from the original text. "Do not suffer these Britons to be ready against us." Lucius then commanded the trumpets to blow, and this was a little bit weird, the description here. Either the trumpets blew so loudly that the ground shook, or in response to the trumpets blowing, so many people were moving that the ground shook.
I would say either or is fine. It's just the symbolism there is just that the earth itself is announcing the arrival of this great force.
Yeah.
It's not just some sound, or it's not just we hear them moving.
Yeah.
It's the earth is quaking under the weight of their army. That's how mighty that they are.
And so begins the proper war. It was great and terrible, and there were losses on both sides, and the knights were awesome and did awesome things. Blah blah blah.
There's
blah.
a lot of a lot of the second half of this story, a lot of this episode even just covers the like, and then this guy was captured.
Yeah.
But then he was saved, and he would have died if not saved by this guy.
Yeah.
And this, which is very like Thomas Mallory is very good about explaining you exactly what happens in the fight.
Yeah.
This is the fight. This is how the fight worked out. This is who got in trouble and who didn't, and who died and who didn't, and why they did or didn't through the fight.
So in my notes, I've included the notable bits.
Yeah.
Of note, Arthur whipped out Excalibur and waited until he saw the thickest group of Romans threatening his men and then slew them all. And then he killed a giant called Gallipus. This part was cool. He cut off his legs and said, now you are of a better, at the knees. He cut off his legs at the knees and said, now you are of a better size to deal with than you were. And then cut his head off.
Just a good trash talk.
That was pretty
good stuff.
And then this next bit was funny. The narrative says that Sir Gawaine killed 3 admirals. Then, almost like an afterthought, like in the narrative, it says, and so did all the Knights of the Round Table. All the Knights of the Round Table killed 3 admirals. Like, I thought it was just, maybe it's because I was tired. I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
So,
I think it is. It's like everyone did it, but Gawaine especially did it.
So the battle goes on for a pretty long while. Many Saracens were killed. They weren't going to be missed. The Britons had the advantage, and then the disadvantage, and then the advantage again. It goes on like this until finally Arthur sees Lucius fighting on the battlefield. So he rides over to him, and they started fighting. They fought each other like savages. And finally, Lucius slashed Arthur across the face, leaving a big old gash. When Arthur felt the gash, he struck down with Excalibur. It went down through the top of Lucius's head, and just like in the last episode, did not stop until it was in the middle of his torso. And just like that, the Emperor was dead. Bye, Lucius. Bye-bye. When the Romans realized what had happened, they ran. Arthur and his men, they chased after them and killed any that they could catch. When it was all said and done, over 100,000 Roman soldiers were killed in the Battle of Sessoine, including Lucius. The Britons looted the bodies, buried their own dead, made note of all of their own dead, who they were, what their estate was, that kind of thing. And then Arthur sent his wounded to the surgeons and told them to, quote, spare no salves nor medicines till they were whole, end quote. So then there's this interesting bit that I wanted to talk about. Mm-hmm. Arthur rides back over to Lucius's corpse and realizes with him are the corpses of the Sudan of Syria, the king of Egypt and Ethiopia, and 17 other kings of various regions, as well as 60 senators of Rome. And so the way I interpreted what happened, Arthur had all of these notable enemies embalmed and mummified, and then laid to rest in lead coffins, and had their weapons and their banners inlaid in the coffins, so anyone looking at the coffins would know who was inside them. Which I thought about it for a bit because it really confused me, but like the more I thought about it, I kind of like that. You know, it's another, in my mind, it's another example of Arthur being as honorable as he knows how to be, right? Like he finds all these dead North African, Middle Eastern kings and royals and nobility, and he honors them the best way he knew how, according to their traditions.
Right. Yeah, and we know he's aware of at least Egyptian tradition because he's been there.
Right.
He's been to Egypt before, so he knows what mummification is. And I 100% agree. This is Arthur saying, you know, we were enemies, you are now dead. There's no reason for me to have animosity against you. Mm-hmm. You know, our problems have been solved, and to be respectful now is no dishonor. And as a king, there is a specific, or there's a particular need politically to honor nobility, because it is the honor upon which you are yourself respected.
You want to be honored when you're dead, too.
And so, yeah, you can't just like, well, he was an enemy king, you know, and spit on him, because then, well, people are going to do that to you. They're like, well, being a king doesn't matter after you die. You're not the king anymore. It's like, well, no, as a king, it matters that you show the example. This is how royalty is treated, even if there are enemies, even if we've had to kill them. So we're going to embalm them, preserve them. We're going to mummify them. I think especially the king of Egypt is probably very happy with this arrangement.
Probably, yeah.
We'll have lead sarcophagus, which is, lead is very expensive, partially because it's so damn heavy and it's so expensive to move. Mm-hmm. So they're given very nice coffins. Their banners and weapons are inlaid, so they're given a soldier's burial. You know, it's like we still will bury veterans with flags. And sometimes, you know, with a rifle even. So they're given a warrior's
Send off.
Basically, in a manner that befits their station. Very noble of Arthur to do that.
Mm-hmm. So after he did this, he found 3 senators still alive, and he said to them, "If you value your lives, you will take these dead bodies and carry them with you to Rome, present them to the governor on my behalf, show him these letters I've written for him, and tell him that I'll be in Rome very soon. I suppose the Romans will think twice about demanding any tribute from me in mind. I command you, when you get to Rome, to say to the governor and all the council and senate that I send them all these dead bodies for the tribute that they have demanded. If they aren't content with my gift, I shall pay more when I arrive. I owe no other tribute, and I will pay no other tribute. I think what I have given shall suffice for Britain, for Ireland, and for Germany. Furthermore, I want you to say to them that I command them never to demand tribute nor taxes of me or my realm, or else lose their heads." You are looking through your book.
Yeah. So one thing I want to bring up, first of all, last episode, I said, keep in mind the fight with the giant. I think, and the prophetic dream. So the prophetic dream, the boar,
Yeah.
I think, simply symbolizes the giants and the army of Rome, but also the empire of Rome itself. But I really like the foreshadowing of the symbolism of the fight with the first giant of Guienne on that hill.
Mm-hmm.
So the way the fight goes is Arthur first cuts off the genitals.
Yeah.
That's the first injury.
Yeah.
Now, per my text, the first success that Arthur has against the Romans is that he captures their standards.
Okay.
Now, the Roman standard, which holds the banner, but it's also got this the giant gold imperial eagle on it.
Uh-huh.
It's sort of a, how do I want to call it? It's an antique of military tradition that we still have, like standards and flags for military units, even in the United States.
Capture the Flag is a game for a very good reason.
Right. To have the standard fall into enemy hands is a massive disgrace.
Mm-hmm.
To have the standard hit the ground is a massive disgrace.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, if you were a foot soldier and you saw the standard bearer die, it was expected that you became the new standard bearer.
Whoever witnessed it.
If you saw it lying on the ground, you would drop your weapon, stop fighting whoever you're fighting, at the risk of your own life, and you pick that shit up.
Damn.
And it was a huge morale booster. Like, to see that standard still up was like, fuck yeah, we can still win this.
Okay.
There's sort of a similar scene, if you've ever seen Mel Gibson's The Patriot, fantastic film. At the end of the movie, where there's this battle and all the American rebels are like retreating, and Mel Gibson runs up, grabs the big fucking flag and starts waving it. That's sort of the same thing. And then they all turn around and go, oh shit, we can still win.
What was that movie again? Sorry.
The Patriot.
The Patriot. Okay.
Fantastic film.
I will
pretty sure Heath
include
Ledger's in it too.
I will include it in the link dump.
But yeah, that's sort of that moment where he picks it up, and that's the American standard. He's waving the flag, and then all the rebels are like, oh wait, we can still win. And then they go back and they turn the tide and then they win.
Uh-huh.
And even like the British general there, like he sees that happen and he goes, ah, fuck, we lost.
Isn't there like a painting of, I'm reminded of a painting to do with Delaware, where that same thing happened. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Not the specifics, but it doesn't surprise me that would be a painting. It's a very symbolic thing.
Yeah.
So think of the Roman standard as the American flag.
Okay.
You see that hit the ground, you're like, we got to pick that up. And I would liken that to the giant's genitals. It is the thing that motivated, because he was a rapist, right? That was what he wanted. He wanted women to fornicate with until they died.
Yeah.
What the Romans want is their standard up. It's the source of virility, of life, of manhood for the Roman legion.
Uh-huh.
With that taken, they're emasculated in a way.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, we've lost. We can't even hold on to our standard.
So you said that standards were mentioned in your version?
Yes, that was the first thing. That was the first success Arthur had, was that they had captured the standards, and it was specifically mentioned that they captured
in this
them.
battle.
Yes.
Okay.
And so I would liken that, foreshadowing, that is the removing of the genitals. He's taken their manhood from them.
Okay.
Then the next main accomplishment in this battle is that all, I think it was 50 of them, all 50 of the giants of Gawaine are killed.
Yeah.
And so that's obviously a direct parallel to him killing the giant of Gawaine. But when Emperor Lucius is outlining his plan for like how he's going to beat Arthur, he really relies on these giants. He's like, I'm going to have all these knights, but then also I'm going to get these giants and they're worth 50 men each, and that's how I'm going to crush Arthur.
Right.
So his strategy was really built around using these giants. They are the core, they are the gut, they are the center of his plan.
It didn't last long.
Right. And so the second wound that Arthur inflicts on the giant of Gawaine is he disembowels him.
Mm-hmm.
The second injury against the Emperor Lucius is that he guts his strategy. He kills all the giants. Then the last thing is they fall down the hill. Arthur has killed the giant. He's effectively won at this point. What does he do next? He beheads it.
Yeah.
Who would be the head of the emperor or the Roman legion? That would be Emperor Lucius himself. The next success is he kills the emperor. He beheads them.
Yeah.
He cuts the head off the snake. And then what does he do with the head?
He has it put on a spear to wave it around, show it off.
It's a trophy.
It's a trophy.
He shows off, look what I did.
Yeah.
And he hangs it on the barbican of the place that he had terrorized, of the place that was claimed by him that Arthur has reclaimed.
Yeah.
So, if Lucius is the head of the legion, and he has all these other kings who are the heads of their respective regions, that he's beheaded now.
Sending
he's
all of them off to Rome.
He then puts them in very ornate coffins. He makes them a trophy of a kind, sends them to Rome, which is the place they had taken that Arthur is reclaiming from them.
Working on it, yeah.
To show off. Basically, like, look what I did. And I'm coming for it.
I'm coming for you.
I will also mention in mine, it specifies, and this is where I was reminded from your text, like, man, Arthur's fucking savage sometimes.
Yeah.
Sir Kay is very badly wounded in this battle. To the point where Sir Kay is taken to Arthur, and he says, "My liege, for long I have served you, and now I must die. I beg you, commend me to your excellent Queen Guinevere, and to my wife, who has never caused me a moment's anger, and ask her to pray for my soul."
I don't think this came up in my version.
So he's like, I'm definitely dying.
Okay.
And Arthur says, but you must not die. Weeping with his own hands, withdrew the spear shaft. Then he takes him to a pavilion, tells the surgeon, like, whatever you got to do, keep him alive. The surgeon's like, hey, all the vitals were missed. I think he's going to make it. And then Arthur says to Sir Kay, I shall avenge you, and filled with sadness and rage, returned to the battle. 30 times Arthur rushed upon the enemy, and each time men and horses fell to the terrible blows he delivered with his sword Excalibur.
Sure.
It continues on. We get to the end of the battle. The most important of Arthur's knights now rallied round him, and before leading them in the final attack, Arthur addressed them as follows. Savagery warning. My lords, in honor of Sir Kay and Sir Bedivere, who has died, right? I think he was killed. No, that was, somebody else was. Anyway, he may have been injured, he may have died. But he says, in honor of Sir Kay and Sir Bedivere, who have both fallen in this battle, I exhort you not to spare the enemy. Do not, for the sake of a ransom, take any prisoners, but kill them. Kill them all, Christians and heathens alike.
Damn.
No quarter.
No quarter with
And this is the bulk of the Roman army. He is all 100,000 of them. I want them dead.
I think it's interesting that because this is a break from his normal way of doing things.
Yeah.
You know, he's really embodying Arthur the Conqueror.
Yes.
In this
well, and this
campaign.
This is not Arthur the divinely appointed noble king. This is Arthur the angered brother.
Yeah.
He was raised with Sir Kay.
Yeah.
That's the closest thing he has ever had to a brother.
Yeah.
He's been with on most of his adventures. He brought him to help him kill the giant. Like, Kay is his best friend.
Yeah.
And he thinks Kay is going to die. And for a moment, he comes back down to earth. He is mortal, human, relatable Arthur. And he says, fuck all of you. I want every throat slit. I want every horse put down.
Damn.
Not one of you makes it.
Damn.
No prisoners. I don't care how high the ransom is. Kill that motherfucker.
Okay.
And I was like, holy shit. I get it, but wow.
Whoa.
And then, because he is a savage, when he sends off, this is what he says in my version. My lords, please accompany these corpses to Rome and tell your potentate that this...
That's governor.
Yes. That this is the tribute offered to Rome by King Arthur of Britain. So he just sends the dead kings, and he goes, there's your fucking tribute.
There's your tribute.
That we believe this sufficient to pay the present demand and the arrears which have accumulated over the last 60 years. If, however, the potentate considers it insufficient, we promise faithfully to increase the tribute in kind when we march upon Rome itself, which we shall do in the course of the next few weeks.
Yeah.
So he says, we're pretty sure this settles our debt, and if you don't agree, we'll give you more.
We'll give you more. We'll be there soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, God, this guy's harsh.
Yeah.
I love it, though.
So
he is ruthless.
So with this said to the senators, they left for Rome with all the bodies Arthur gave them, which I imagine was no easy feat. Emperor Lucius's corpse was carried on its own in a palanquin. Behind him was a carriage with the corpses of the Sudan of Syria and the king of Egypt. A Sudan is like a king.
Yep.
And then in a cart behind them, the bodies of the senators. It doesn't mention the other 17 kings, but I imagine they were also
of like treatment.
They were given a similar treatment to the Sudan and the king of Egypt.
Yeah.
These senators, they did as Arthur ordered. They went to Rome. They went to the Roman legate and relayed Arthur's message to the governor and the Senate about the battle in France and how they lost more men than could be counted. I think it was like over 100,000 men. And they advised the Senate not to make any more moves against Arthur.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about, even in today, with as high a world population as they have now, but especially back then when the population was much lower, losing 100,000 working age men.
That is just about the size of where we live.
That is economically devastating.
It is. It is.
Like, how many of those men were farmers that are now not producing crop? How many men of those were craftsmen that now cannot build homes, cannot fix homes, cannot provide clothing, basic needs? How many of them made tools that now, if you break your shit, it's like, well, I can't fix it. The blacksmith went to war and died.
I am reminded of that castle that Balin unwittingly felled. I think this is more economically devastating than that.
Yeah, well, certainly in measurement of human suffering, because when Balin annihilated a country, like, everybody died.
Yeah.
There was no one left behind to suffer.
But it was also just the nobles.
Right. But in this, it's like all of the men of families, all of the providers are dead.
Yeah.
So there are just widows and orphans.
So many.
With no one to feed them, no one to protect them. And it's like, in measurement of human suffering, this is far worse. Because women and children are going to starve. They're going to be taken advantage of. They're going to be murdered.
Yeah.
Not good.
Not good.
That to lose that many men is devastating.
Yeah.
So I can totally get why the senators are like, please stop.
Yeah.
Don't aggravate him further. We're already in for a gigantic depression.
And he has sworn he will do worse if we keep fighting him.
We're politically unstable. We're economically unstable. This is not good.
Not good.
Stop making it worse.
Chapter 9. How Arthur, after he had achieved the battle against the Romans, entered into Almain and so into Italy.
So, this bit is confusing. Maybe you can help me here. I can tell you what Arthur did here next, but I can't rightly say why he did it, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So he traveled through Almain, which is in modern-day Germany, I think, and went to Tuscany, which, as the voice of Camelot said, is in Italy. It's the province where Florence is, for reference. It's in northern Italy. The only reason I can figure he went to Tuscany and stayed there for a little bit is because it was a Roman territory. So he went there and he came across a city that wouldn't surrender to him or obey his commands. Maybe it was Florence. I don't know. It doesn't specify what the city was. It was just a city in Tuscany.
Yeah.
He attacked them numerous times, and they stubbornly refused to surrender. So after this went on for God only knows how long, he called upon one of his knights. Ironically, the knight's name was Sir Florence. And he said to Sir Florence that they lacked victual, which is an archaic word for basically people food, like food fit for a person to eat. So he told Florence to ride into the woods where he would likely find many enemies with beasts. And he said to take with him his nephew Gawaine, as well as Sirs Wishard, Clegis, Claremont, and the captain of Cardiff, and to hunt down and bring back as many beasts as they could. So the bit I'm confused about is what is the importance of this specific city? Why is he like working so hard on taking this one place that's not even named?
Yeah. Let's see. I don't know specifically the topography of Italy itself. I do know the north has mountain ranges. So he would have traveled through mountains to get there, which is probably why they're low on the victuals.
Yeah.
And he would have to go through this area to get to Rome unless he were to travel by sea through the Mediterranean.
Mm-hmm.
And he probably just doesn't want to do that.
I mean, where he is at this point, it would be a pain in the ass to backtrack and sail around.
Right. So it makes sense that he's going through there. As far as why he would stop and bother with this sort of comes back to the same like tactical disadvantage that King Uther would be at if he bypasses one of the castles. Like you're leaving a rebel stronghold behind you.
You don't want to leave enemies behind
you. Now, he has a large enough force. They have a small enough force. He probably could have gotten away with it. But this, I think, shows what I had said last episode is that sort of native disdain for frontier Romans. Whereas Arthur is like, we're part of the Roman Empire. I have legitimacy to the crown. I've defeated the old emperor. I am rightfully emperor of Rome. And they think Tuscany is like, no, we're Romans. We're from here. You're a savage Western barbarian, and you can kick rocks. We will not answer to you. And so Arthur is probably thinking like, I can't start off my reign as Roman emperor like this. I have to prove to them I am your sovereign lord, and you will listen to me.
Okay.
So he's disciplining an obstinate child.
That makes
in a sense where he's like, I can't let this go.
That makes sense. Okay. So so he tells the Gawaine and these other knights to go ride off into the forest, find some enemies, take as many of their beasts as they can So I'm confused by the word beasts here. Like, does he mean cattle or something else?
I think it's intentional to not be narrowly defined as cattle. Like, yes, take their cows, take their pigs, take their sheep, but also hunt the deer out of their forests. Because if we take all their cattle, then they're going to resort to hunting. Naturally.
Prevent them from hunting too.
Right. But if we take their cattle and we hunt all the big game, they have no food.
I gotcha. So these knights, they ride far, they go over hills, they go through forests, they ride on until they come upon a nice meadow to rest in. So just before sunrise the next morning, Gawaine takes his horse and sneaks away in search of adventure. Fairly soon after riding off, he finds an armed man walking jovially, alongside his horse. He was well armed, he had a shield and a spear. His shield had an emblem of 3 griffins, one gold, one red-black, and one silver. So Gawaine, he sees this man, and I guess he thought the guy looked too damn happy or something. I don't know. Because he hefted his spear, and he rode straight over to the guy, and he says, "Where are you from?" And the guy's like, "From Tuscany. Why do you demand so boldly? You'll get no prey here. If you've got something to prove, try me. You'll be my prisoner, or else you'll leave me be." In response, like the hot-headed jackass Gawaine is, he says, You go greatly and speak proudly. I tell you, for all your boasting, to ready your gear before I bring my anger down on you. So, how closely does that line up with your?
Yeah, I mean, you
events?
just got two strutting gamecocks that are like, "You think you're hot shit, huh?" And he's like, "I am hot shit. Who are you?" And he goes, "I'm hotter shit. Let's do this." And then they got to fight. You know, you just got two Giga Chads that are like, there can be only one Sigma. So we're gonna figure it out.
This episode is brought to you by me. I made this show, and it's a pretty shoestring budget. I have a membership to a local studio, Vidwest Studios. That's how I have all the equipment and the space that I need to record. I pay for that. I pay for books, or I get them from the library. And that's about it. So if you want to support the show, there are a few ways to do that. In the episode description, there will be a link to the Patreon. You can pitch in $1 a month, and you'll in return get ad-free episodes. Or you can do more. There's a guy, Josh Hughes. He gives us like $12 a month. We appreciate you, Josh. You're the reason why we pay for the studio at all. But he does not provide enough for us to pay for books necessarily, so you could pitch in, and we could pay for books. As well, just do the normal stuff that you could do to support a show, like share your favorite episodes with friends, rate the show on whatever platform you listen to it on. Like if you listen on Spotify, give us a 4 or 5 star rating. If you listen on YouTube, like the episode. Leave comments if whatever platform you're listening to this on allows you to do that. Engage with the show. And also, if you have any book suggestions that you would like us to read, let us know either in the comments or you can email us. We have an email address for the podcast, funk.lit.pod@gmail.com. That is func.lit.pod@gmail.com.
Chapter 10 of a battle done by Sir Gawaine against the Saracen, which after was yielding and became Christian.
So the battle, like most of these battles, started with jousting. On the first pass, they stabbed through each other's shields and caught each other in the shoulders. Then they both pulled out their swords, and they whacked each other on the helmet so hard there were sparks. Which, that's never happened so far in the narrative. Yeah. Like, that's a first. And so, for some reason here, Gawaine was perplexed and embarrassed. If I were to hazard a guess as to why, it'd be because he wasn't expecting to meet his match from some random knight from Tuscany.
Yeah, certainly not a Saracen.
So he whipped out his sword, and I quoted this because it's totally unnecessary. Galatine, his good sword he smote through shield and thick hauberk made of thick mails. This was the description given of his sword. Like,
that's right.
That's how awesome his sword is.
That's the good one.
So he whips out his sword, he rushes the Saracen, and, quote, gave him a large wound that men might see both liver and lung, end quote. So this confused me. I don't think he actually exposed liver or lung, because that would be lethal, and the battle kept going on after this, so I'm not sure what that means. I think maybe, like, his intention was to expose liver and lung? I don't know.
So, if we want to be realistic, we could read it as he cut through his armor so that you could see his torso.
That would make sense.
And so it was just such a good stroke, managed to avoid fatal wounding. However, this is a legend, this is myth.
Yeah.
I can 100% believe that he exposed literal lung and liver, and this guy survived, because it's just meant to show, like, this is a tough bastard.
Sure.
Or maybe he's got some magical stuff. I mean, you could do that to Arthur and he'd still be alive. Because he wouldn't bleed, as long as he's got the sheath.
Right. But, I mean, Galatine...
he lost the sheath, but that's not the point. If he had the sheath, he could have done that.
I was thinking that, but to make it more about Gawaine, Galatine, as far as I can tell, doesn't have any magical properties, except I guess that it can go through shields and hauberks.
Right. To me, that just says it's a very well-made sword.
Right. Exactly.
But yeah, I think you could either read it as, he struck him so hard he tore his armor apart and he was like unarmored now. Or you could read it as he mortally wounded this man who then was not mortally wounded.
Right.
Which is how awesome he was.
Right. So Gawaine does that, gives this ostensibly mortal wound, would have killed anyone else. In response, the Saracen struck back at Gawaine, cutting a vein, which those are the blood vessels that spurt blood, in case you weren't aware.
No. Arteries spurt because they're under pressure.
What?
So the arteries come from the heart to...
Oh, damn it. Did I get those confused?
I think you got it backwards.
Yeah, you're right.
And then the veins are the blood returning. Now, the venous blood, those are the worst cuts. Those are worse.
No, because the arterial blood, those spurt. The veins don't spurt.
But it spurts in rhythm, like with the heart beating, right? And it's easier to stem that, partially because they're more noticeable, so you see them sooner. The venous ones, they're dangerous because they're subtle.
They are.
It's a slow, it's a steady bleed, but it's heavy. It's real heavy. So, like when we did combat lifesaver training, they were always like, if you see a venous wound and an arterial one, you do the venous one first.
Really?
Because that's the one that's going to kill you.
Yeah, I wasn't much on trauma. I was a civilian EMT. I mainly dealt with like elderly folk.
To be fair, like
crashes.
the margins of the difference there are probably slight, where it's like, well, the venous one will kill you in 90 seconds and the arterial one will kill you in 120 seconds. So take care of the venous first.
Yeah, arterial ones, in my experience, they were always the ones that we dealt with first because they were the most dramatic.
Well, yeah, that's going to make somebody panic.
Exactly. Yeah. Like I specifically remember, this happened sometime in the last 10 years, HIPAA, I'm not being more specific than that. There was a time when someone who was in a car crash, he had both a venous and arterial bleed, and we dealt with the spurting one first because we were very cognizant of the fact that onlookers would probably freak out if we dealt with the one that didn't look lethal first.
Well, and patient attitude is very important when dealing with that kind of stuff. To the point even that Navy corpsmen are trained that if a Marine loses his testicles or his genitals, to not tell them.
Oh.
Yeah. So like if a guy were to step on an IED and just it's gone, and he's like, "Oh, doc, do I still have my dick?" They'll go, "Yeah."
Totally.
They'll lie to you because they've actually found the survival rate of Marines that are told that dramatically increases. All other things remaining the same. And the best they can come up with is they chalk that up to will to live. Like once they find out that they've been castrated, their will to live plummets.
That actually, we're going on a little bit of a tangent, but it reminds me of this story I heard about, there was this guy, an elderly guy, who he almost certainly was retired. That's how old this guy was. He was on a subway in New York City, and he had a heart attack. He was dying, and there was a firefighter off duty on the subway who saw this happen, and he started treating the guy, and it looked like he wasn't gonna live, and just like as a ditch effort, he screamed into this guy's ear, "You're gonna be late for work!" And the adrenaline surge that
That's amazing.
Was just enough to get this guy's heart to beat.
That's a quick thinking fireman. He did a great job.
Anyways, we're gonna circle back. We don't often get to talk about our prior lives, but that was nice.
It was fun.
Circling back, Gawaine struck a lethal blow to the Saracen. The Saracen struck a lethal blow to him. And the Saracen said to him, "You'll need to bind the wound or you'll bleed all over your horse and armor. That might be troublesome, though. None of the barbers in Britain will be able to staunch your blood. Whoever is hurt with this blade will never stop bleeding."
So it sounds like he does have magical items.
I feel like he's boasting, personally.
Could be. Could be.
Yeah.
I'm inclined to take him at his word, though.
Sure. So Sir Gawaine, he's like, "'Tis but a scratch.
Tis but a flesh wound.
Your words rather don't scare me. You're going to suffer before we're done. But first, tell me quickly, who can staunch the bleeding?" The Saracen says, "I can, and I will, if you'll feed me and help me. I want to be christened." "You do?" "I do. As a man of God, if you help me do this, it'll be a boon for my soul." And Gawaine's like, "I will do this. So help me God, I will help you do this. But first you must tell me why you were here alone and who your allegiance is sworn to." Is that track with what was in your version?
So I got the gist, though, that he wasn't just like out in the woods, met a Christian, was like, "I've been waiting to be converted."
No.
It was that Gawaine's performance and courage impressed him so much
That he wanted
that he was
to-
like, whatever religion you belong to, I want that shit. Because you're a damn good man, and I want to be like you.
Okay. So that explains a bit. So Gawaine wants to know who this guy is. He says, "Sir, I am Priamus. My father is a prince. He's been rebelling against Rome and taken many of their lands. My father is a descendant of Alexander and of Hector. Duke Joshua and Maccabeus are also of our bloodline. I am by right the inheritor of Alexandria and Africa and all the outer isles, yet I will believe in the Lord that you believe in. For your efforts, I will give you treasure. I was so elated and haughty in my heart that I thought no one was my equal. I was sent into this war with 140 knights, and now that I've encountered you, I've had my fill of fighting. Sir Knight, I pray you tell me what you are." And so this bit gets a little confusing. So I'm going to read it, and then you tell me what your version said, because I feel like there was a little bit here lost in translation, right? Gawaine says, "I am no knight. I was brought in the guard robe." I don't know what that is. "I was brought in the guard robe with the noble King Arthur for many years, to clean his armor and tidy his long coats. Last Yule he made me yeoman, and gifted me a horse and saddle, and 100 pounds. If I'm lucky, I have no doubt I'll be advanced and helped by my liege lord." And then Priamus says, "If his knaves are so tough, his knights must be pretty good. Now, for the king's love of heaven, I don't care if you're a knave or knight. Tell me your name." And Gawaine's like, "By God, I will tell you the truth. My name is Sir Gawaine. I am well known in Arthur's court. I am one of the knights of the Round Table, and he made me a duke by his own hand. Therefore, do not begrudge me my privilege, for it is the grace of God that gave me strength." So I feel like there's a joke here that I missed.
So it could either be, you could read it as either a joke or a test. So the joke would be, he's like, "Oh man, you bested me and I'm so impressed. Who are you?" And he's like, "I'm just a servant, bro. I'm fucking nobody."
Yeah.
One is a way to be like, that's how awesome King Arthur's court is. Like, the servants are like me. You know, imagine what the knights are. And that's what Priamus says. Is he's like, "Damn, if you're just a yeoman, holy shit, those knights must be awesome."
Yeah.
So he's kind of poking fun at Priamus, being like, "You got beat by a nobody."
Yeah.
Or you could read it as he's testing his honor. Like, how's he going to react if he thinks he's been beaten by nobody? Is he going to throw a temper tantrum? Is he going to get all depressed?
Yeah.
Is he going to be like, "Oh, I'm useless"? Or is he going to be like, "Wow, I've got a lot to learn"?
Yeah.
You know? And it seems that he passed the test.
Yeah.
Or he took the joke in good nature and was like, "That's
You're
funny.
funny.
You got me."
So Gawaine tells him the truth. And then Priamus responds with, "Well, now I am more pleased than if you'd given me all the gold in Provence and Paris. I would rather have been trampled by horses than for some rascal to have won such fame on me."
Yeah, so after Gawaine gives up either the joke or tells him it's a test, he's like, "Oh, thank God." Like,
Yeah.
Man, that would have been embarrassing.
Yeah. And so then he's like, and so this is, again, like, I was very tired when I jotted all these notes down, so I might have like goofed it a little bit. So if it doesn't seem quite right, please correct me. So he's like, but now, Sir Knight, I warn you that nearby is the Duke of Lorraine with his army, and the noblemen of Dauphiny, the lords of Lombardy, the garrison of Goddard, and the Saracens of Southland. I like that wordplay there. About 60,000 men of arms. But if we get out of here quickly, we'll both be injured, given our wounds, and probably never recover. Now, so you know, I have a page with me. If he blows his horn, there will be 100 knights that will come to me. If they take you, there will be no ransom that will free you. So that bit confused me after what he had just said. Like, it feels like there's an implied threat here. Like, we have to go, but slowly, and you need to take me with you, or I'm just gonna call my men and you're gonna get captured. Like that, I don't know. It was weird.
I think if my page blew the horn, that was more him just warning of the proximity. He's not saying my page will blow the horn if you don't do it.
If he does.
He's just saying that's how close they are. Is that all I would have to do is blow a horn and they're here.
I gotcha.
So he's like, they're real nearby, so we got to be careful. We can't just gallivant through the woods being super loud. We got to sneak.
So Sir Gawaine rides back to his fellow knights with Priamus and Priamus's page in tow. When Sir Wishard saw Sir Gawaine and how wounded he was, he ran over to him with tears in his eyes. He's like, who hurt you? And Gawaine gestures to Priamus. He's like, he did, but we're friends now. And he has salves to heal us. But that's not important now. I have bad news. And, so he and Priamus, they get off their horses. Gawaine tells them of their enemies nearby. The horses, wander off, start grazing in the meadow. The wounded men took off their armor, and their blood started freshly trickling from their wounds. Priamus took from his page a vial, quote, full of the 4 waters that came out of paradise, end quote. Yeah. He pasted onto their wounds some type of balm or salve, and then washed them out with the water from the vial. Within an hour, they were fully healed. So, I'm confused.
Yeah. I think part of it is it's tied in with Priamus's identity, which we can get into in a little bit at the end of the chapter. But for right now, in the book of Genesis, when it describes the location of the Garden of Eden, it specifically says there are 4 rivers that flow from the Garden of Eden outward in the 4 directions of the compass. 2 of them are the Tigris and the Euphrates. Okay. I don't remember the names of the other 2 off the top of my head.
I had a suspicion it was talking about Eden.
Yeah.
But I've never fully read Genesis.
So the implication is that this water is not from each of the 4 rivers, but from the source of the 4 rivers, the center of paradise itself.
How the fuck did he get that? We'll get into that later.
Yeah.
So, after they were fully healed by this magical water from Eden, apparently, Priamus told Gawaine's pals about, all the lords and knights sworn to, quote, rescue him, and that they would be attacked by thousands of men. He advised they retreat. Gawaine said, it'd be a shame to avoid these men without any battle. I think we should take our weapons and make ourselves ready to meet with these Saracens and unbelievers. With the help of God, we shall overthrow them. Sir Florence shall stay here in this field to keep things... So the text says stale, as a noble knight. He shall keep things stale as a noble knight. Calm? I don't...
in mine, it basically just says he's here to watch the rear.
Thank you.
Like, make sure we don't get flanked.
So he's
keep things in order.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
So Gawaine concludes with, we will not avoid a fight. And Priamus, I picture him putting his hands on his hips at this moment. He's like, now you shut up. I warn you that you'll find in those woods many dangerous knights. They will set beasts on you. They are 60,000. You are 700. They will defeat you 80 times over. And Gawaine's like, nevertheless, we shall fight them. Let's see what they can do. And may the best men win. And that's the end of the chapter. And it's like, Gawaine, you fucking hot-headed idiot.
Yeah. So the coolest thing about this chapter is Sir Priamus.
Yeah. Like, what's his deal? What's up with him?
So it's really, if you are I don't want to sound pretentious when I say this, but a student of history, he name drops a lot of fucking people.
Priamus
as his,
did. Yeah, he did.
as his ancestors.
Mhm.
So specifically, it's Alexander of Africa, which
Yep.
is Alexander the Great, the
Alexander the
Macedonian
Great.
conqueror. Hector.
Who is that?
Hector is the prince of Troy and rival of Achilles in the Iliad.
Whoa.
Hector's father's name, the king of Troy, is Priam. So he's named after him, Priamus.
Okay. So who's Duke Joshua?
Duke Joshua can be interpreted as one of the Jewish traitors to the Roman Empire when the Romans occupied the Holy Land.
Okay. And then the other one that he names
Now,
is...
he said Maccabeus.
Is that how it's
Yeah,
pronounced?
it's pronounced Maccabeus.
Maccabeus.
I'm trying to remember his Jacob. I think it's Jacob Maccabeus. Jacob Maccabeus, son of Mattathias Maccabeus, was a Jewish priest that led the Jewish revolt against the Seleucid Empire in 160 BC. So
I don't know that empire.
this gets into you just don't know the name. The Seleucid Empire was the Macedonian Empire established by Alexander the Great.
Oh.
It was named after one of the later rulers of it, Seleucid something.
Okay.
But it was, all of Persia and Macedon and Asia Minor into Egypt. So they had the Holy Land.
So this guy's a descendant of supposedly a descendant of a lot of important people.
Well, and interestingly, he's the descendant of people on opposite sides of conflicts.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He's the descendant of Alexander the Great,
Yeah.
who is a Greek. The Greeks were the enemies of the Trojans.
Yeah.
But he's also a descendant of Priam.
Yeah.
The Macedonians specifically, that kind of Greek, which Alexander was, established the Seleucid Empire, but he's also the descendant of Jacob Maccabeus, who revolted against the Seleucid Empire and overthrew them out of the Holy Land. So he's this contradiction in person, which all ties into the fact that he's Jewish, because he's a Saracen. He's a non-Christian from the Holy Land, descendant of Jacob Maccabeus, a very prominent Jewish priest, wishing to convert to Christianity.
Did not realize he was Jewish. But that, based on what you just said, okay. Wow.
So that's why he's such an interesting character, because he's got these contradictions in his genealogy already, and then he's this Jewish man in Italy seeking out Christianity in the Roman Empire.
With magic, healing, water.
from Eden.
What the fuck? This guy's an enigma.
Yeah.
Like, how the
He
fuck
is a
does he
very
exist?
fucking cool character.
Yeah. Cool. All right. All right.
Chapter 11. How the Saracens came out of a wood for to rescue their beasts, and of a great battle.
So this is silly, the way this goes, right? Sir Florence calls over this other knight among the 700 men that went with them, which was not specified when they set out.
Yeah.
That just kind of came up when Priamus said it. This guy called Sir Floridas, who had 100 knights with him. And they drove away a herd of cattle. So then a Spaniard, Sir Ferrant, rode up with 700 men on horseback, and he asked why Sir Florence drove away his cattle. In response, Sir Florence took his spear and struck him in the forehead, breaking his neck. Naturally, all hell broke loose.
Yeah.
I
I love the idea that he asked that question in honest curiosity.
Yeah.
Just like, whoa,
What are you doing, man?
what's happening? And he's just like, no response, just murder.
Just murder.
Doesn't say anything, just kills him. He's just like, I've had a rough day. They leave me in the fucking back. I don't even get to go fight. Fuck you, dude. I don't have time for your bullshit. Your cattle are gone. Get out of here. And just kills him.
So Priamus sees all hell break loose, rides over to Gawaine and says, "You must help your countrymen." And Gawaine's like, "Settle down, Priamus. Their success shall be their own. I will not help them unless more enemies arrive. Florence and his men are strong enough. But it's 7-1. I know." So then an earl, Sir Ethelwold, and the Duke of Dutchman, cool name, by the way.
Hell yeah.
They come out of the woods with thousands of fighters and Priamus's knights, and they run into the fray. So that bit confused me, because Priamus's knights were not mentioned until this point, and I'm unclear on if Priamus's knights are on Priamus's side here.
Yeah. So in mine, Priamus goes with Gawaine originally, sort of under pretense that he's like a prisoner in air quotes.
Right.
But he does specify when he's laying out to Gawaine like the enemy forces that he does have men, and he's confident that when his men see that he has switched sides, that they will also switch sides.
Okay.
So there's no guarantee when the battle starts that will happen.
Yeah.
But Priamus is like, I think it will. Like, you can count on them to turn and fight with us. It's not a significant number of men, but it is something.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So Sir Gawaine, like when this happened, Sir Gawaine reassured his knights and told them not to be scared or abashed because they would win. And then, a whole bunch of fighting happened. I skipped a lot of this. A whole bunch of fighting happened. Thousands of men ain't got shit on the Knights of the Round Table. Doesn't matter how many of them there are. They're Knights of the Round Table. They're the best. They killed all that stood against them. They killed so many that their enemies fled. And then Gawaine was like, this makes me glad. Now there are less than 20,000. And so then this giant named Jubance enters the fray. He killed many knights, including this guy, Sir Gerard of Wales, whoever that is. Damn. I don't know. The Britons killed a bunch of Saracens with Sir Priamus by his side. Priamus killed the Marquis of Moises. I don't know what Moises is.
I have no idea.
I don't know, but killed the Marquis of that place. So many men were killed, including, and this part shocked me, Sir Chesselaine, the child and ward of Sir Gawaine.
Mm-hmm.
And so Sir Gawaine, he, like, in mid-battle sees this, he weeps, and then he gets revenge. Good?
Yeah.
Good? I'm confused why this is the first time this guy is mentioned. And why it wasn't mentioned that Gawaine brought him along with him for this trip.
I think it's just assumption. We know knights had pages.
Yeah.
We know they had young men that were knights in training that were just too young or not skilled enough yet to be knights that would help other knights with putting on armor, fetching weapons, and in battle, protecting their flanks.
Yeah.
So they could focus. But they weren't fully armored. They didn't have their own horse. They're not landed gentlemen yet.
So,
and so the idea is that usually there tends to be a fairly close relationship between a knight and his page. Like, you are his very specific instructor in knighthood. Like, he's your apprentice, but in a way he's like your godchild. Like, you're bringing him up in the ways of chivalry, of court etiquette, and of combat training.
so this isn't his son.
No.
Okay, that's
It's
how
not
I
his son.
interpreted it.
No.
That's why I was confused.
But the relationship would be similar to that of a father and a son.
Okay.
And so while it's not explicitly outlined all the time, anytime a knight rides out into battle, he has a page, if not multiple pages, with him.
Seems odd that his page is a knight.
That may have been something that was posthumously added
Oh, fair.
as an honor to his courage.
Fair.
But that would explain why Gawaine was so tore up about it. Like, he would have spent a lot of time with this young man, teaching him how to do things, and they would see that as much like fathers see their sons, as a way of his sort of personage perpetuating itself into the future. So, like, for his page to die is almost a condemnation of his method of chivalry.
Okay.
And so that's why he's so sad about it.
Well, so anyways, shortly after he gets revenge, the battle was over, with quite a few lords of Lombardy and Saracens dead in this once very nice meadow.
Mm-hmm.
Sir Florence and Sir Gawaine, they comforted their people, took many of the beasts for food, looted the battlefield, standard stuff after a big fight. They went back to King Arthur, who was still locked in battle with this city in Tuscany. So they presented to him prisoners from their battle and told him everything that happened while they were gone.
Chapter 12. How Sir Gawaine returned to King Arthur with his prisoners, and how the king won a city, and how he was crowned emperor.
Well, thank God it turned out all right, King Arthur said. He was like, but who's this guy standing by himself? He doesn't look like a prisoner.
Who's this random Jewish boy?
Gawaine says, Sir, this is a certified badass. He's matched me in battle, but he has yielded to God and to me because he wishes to be Christian. If he hadn't, we all would have died. I ask you to baptize him, for there is not a nobler or better knight of arms." So Arthur did that. He baptized him and christened him by his first name, Priamus, and made him a duke and a knight of the Round Table. So I think that's relevant because not most people, but it's common when you're christened to come with a Christian name, maybe change your name in the process.
Yeah.
He kept his name.
We still do that even in the Catholic Church when you get confirmed. Not when you get baptized, but when you get confirmed, you pick a confirmation saint. It's sort of a patron saint. For yourself.
My wife told me about this.
And while it's not like on legal documents or anything, traditionally that is seen as part of your name. So like I now have the middle name Alphonsus.
In addition to your legal middle names.
Right.
Okay. Interesting. So I don't know if I said, he made Priamus a duke and a knight of the Round Table in this moment. Then the king assaulted the city again. He filled the ditch, which is a moat without water.
Mm-hmm.
He filled the ditch, started breaking walls, setting up ladders. He was getting ready to get into the city and start attacking. They were ready to start pillaging. But then a duchess of the city appeared. Her name was Clarison the Countess. I don't know why, but like I picture like a very attractive Italian lady.
That would be preferable to picture, yes.
So she approached Arthur with many of the city's ladies and damsels and begged him, for the love of God, to have the city, but please don't assault it, or many innocent lives will be killed. Arthur raised his helmet's visor and said, "Madam, none of my people will wrong your maidens, nor any that are beholden to you, but the duke of this city shall do as I say." Then he ordered a ceasefire, and the duke's oldest son brought him the keys to the city. It actually said the keys to the city, which surprised me, because like I don't picture a city having, like, I thought that was symbolic.
It is now, because most of our cities aren't barricaded.
Uh-huh.
We don't have barbicans. We don't have actual city gates. We don't, wall in all of our cities.
Yeah.
But certainly there would have been a key that would have been very important to have, that would open guardhouse doors, that would open, the barbican gates, that would unlock the mechanism that lowers the drawbridge. There would be some sort of security measure in place to make sure that not just anybody could do that.
Sure. Well, so anyways, he gets the key to the city. Arthur took the city. He sent the Duke of the city to Dover for imprisonment, and then he set prices for dowries for the Duchess and her children. And then he changed the laws so they would be more like how they were back home in good old Britain.
Better way.
Yeah. So then, Arthur continues his conquest of Italy. He eventually conquered Rome, put his banners up so everyone would know it was his. It says a little bit more about it, but nothing like notable. Like,
it's pretty typical. I'm the emperor now.
The big battle was the one with Lucius.
Right.
So then he ordered his men not to rape or coerce any of the women, regardless of if they were married or not. He's like, we are not pillaging. We're not doing that.
We're better than that.
When the people of Milan heard that Rome was conquered, they sent Arthur a ton of money, and they begged him as their lord to take pity on them. They promised to be his subjects forever, and to give him fealty of Pleasance, Pavia, Pietersaint, and the port of Tremble, and to annually give him 1,000,000 gold coins for the rest of his life.
Not bad.
Not bad.
Not bad at all.
Yeah, so this is the major turning point, right? Like, the moment Milan does this, a bunch of other Roman territories also start doing this.
Right.
Like, this is the watershed moment, I suppose. Like, when all of these Roman territories start acknowledging Arthur as their lord.
Well, yeah, he has the city of Rome.
Yeah.
And Milan, ostensibly the next most fortified, wealthy city, gives up.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, shit.
Yeah. So one day, a Saturday, the senators and cardinals of Rome that still lived went to him and prayed for peace, and prayed that as governor of Rome, he give them 6 weeks to gather all the Romans to formally crown him emperor. Arthur's like, I will allow this. It will be as you say. I will be crowned on Christmas Day, and my Knights of the Round Table will be there. And so on Christmas Day, the senators appointed him, and the Pope himself crowned him emperor in front of every royal that could possibly be there, right? Then Arthur doled out dukedoms and earldoms of all of his new lands to his knights. Nobody argued about
it was so generous that no one could complain.
Right. He gave Sir Priamus the Duchy of Lorraine, which remind me where that is. Do you know?
I don't, but there was
there was mention of
Knight
that.
of Lorraine that stood against him in Tuscany.
Right. Oh, okay, so it's probably somewhere around there.
Probably in northern Italy.
Priamus thanked him and said he'd serve Arthur for the rest of his life. All of this done, Arthur's knights and lords from Britain, they assembled and said to him, Arthur, your war is done, and thank God for it. Your conquest was successful, and we know that there is nobody in the world that would dare to war against you. We ask your permission to go home. We want to see our wives. We've been away far too long. And he's like, you speak truth. It would be unwise to tempt God. Make yourselves ready for England. I'm not sure what he meant there. Like, was the alternative to, like, keep conquering? Like, I feel like he succeeded.
No, I think it's more their concern that now that Arthur is emperor of the Roman Empire, that he would stay in Rome.
Oh, yeah.
And they're like, we do not want to stay in Rome.
We don't want to stay in Rome.
I want to go home. Which, like, this is a very similar problem that Alexander the Great had when he went conquering, is actually, like, historically, a lot of what he could have done was hampered by the willingness of his men to go that far away.
Yeah.
Without going home. There was a lot of concern amongst his officers when he conquered Egypt from the Persian Empire.
That he'd want to stay there?
That he did stay there. And they're like, he's going native. Like, he got crowned pharaoh. He was officially recognized as a living god, king of Egypt. And he bought into it. And so they're like,
shit.
This guy's getting a little too, like, we're worried that he's losing sight of Macedon and where we're from and what we are, and he's getting a little too Egyptian for me. And then when he conquered Babylon, the rest of the Persian Empire, ostensibly, they're like, there was a thing where he, like, refused to desecrate the statues of former Persian kings who historically had persecuted the Greeks.
Okay.
Like, especially Xerxes. You know, the movie 300, Xerxes tries to conquer Greece, the Battle of Thermopylae, big deal. Like, lots of Greeks died to King Xerxes. And he was like, I'm not going to tear the statues down. You know, I'm going to leave them up. He was a great man in other respects, even if he did kill a lot of Greeks.
That's interesting.
And the Macedonians were pissed.
It's making me think of, like, because the thing with empires is once they get large enough, you know, it starts absorbing so many cultures. I could see why, a conqueror or an emperor would kind of lose sight of their core identity along the way because of all of these cultures they're absorbing. So
and to be an effective ruler of them, you have to buy in some. Yeah. You know, you have to give them some notion that you are theirs also. Like, you don't, if you're Alexander the Great, you're the king of Macedon, yes. But if you're going to be the pharaoh of Egypt also, you have to convince Egyptians that you are Egyptian at least some, that you're their pharaoh, not just a pharaoh. Yeah. And so that can lead to some abrasion between the Macedons who are like, you're fucking Macedonian, bro. Yeah. So I think that's what they're worried about with Arthur.
Circling
like,
back, yeah.
Like, don't be too Roman on us, okay? Like, we came here to conquer Rome, not be Rome.
We conquered Rome. We came, we conquered, we want to go home.
I want my wife.
And Arthur's like, you know what? I agree.
I would also like my wife.
Let's not tempt God. Let's go back home.
Yeah.
So they all went home. Arthur went back the way he came, him and his men. They arrived in the port of Sandwich. Queen Guinevere met him there, and he was warmly and nobly received by the commoners in every city, and there were many, many homecoming gifts from all. And that's how it ends. So endeth Book 5.
Yeah. So the last thing I said to remember from episode 1 was that the ambassadors showed up and were in court on New Year's Day.
Yeah.
By Christmas,
Yeah.
Arthur is crowned Emperor of Rome.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty significant.
Less than a year.
Less than a year.
Also, theologically significant in that the birth of the new Roman Empire coincides with the birth of Christ. So it's this very close tie of Arthur's leadership with godliness. He becomes the Roman emperor the same day that God became man.
Right. Okay. Interesting. So what do we think about that story now that it's over?
I liked it.
You liked it?
I liked it. I think I'm a big fan of shorter narratives.
Yeah.
My favorite medium of storytelling is the short story. Edgar Allan Poe actually writes an essay about this, where he says that it is the ultimate form of written medium, and it's because, and this only works if you follow his definition, that it is something that can be read in a single sitting, in one evening. Because the struggle that the novelist has is that the reader has time away from the work.
Yeah.
And so...
Which is why it helps if your chapters are about different things in the narrative.
Yeah, and so you lose the emotional impact of the beginning by the end.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you have a short story that can be read in like an hour and a half, one sitting, one evening by the fire, as Edgar Allan Poe put it, you have complete emotional control of that reader's experience.
So for you, this specific section of the book, this one story, how long did it take you to read the first time you read through
I read this in 35 minutes the first time I read it.
Okay. For me, considerably longer because I was annotating.
Well, and you got to translate. Mine is
that's
rendered in modern idiom.
Yes.
So,
which I now have as a link in the link dump. I've got a link for Thrift Books for your exact copy of the book.
It's good.
People can get.
I like it.
Unfortunately, Thrift Books doesn't have any in stock at the time of recording this.
Stock.
But maybe they'll have more in the future.
That's true. They're pretty good about getting stuff in.
And if you want to struggle along with me, I mean, I'm doing the hard work, right? You can read through it once, and then you can listen to these episodes and
catch some of the things you may have missed in the weird wording.
Mm-hmm. And I unfortunately, Zach, I have bad news for you regarding the short story, which is this is for a while going to be the shortest story we cover.
Yes. Next, I believe, is Sir Lancelot.
It is.
The Tale of Lancelot.
It
and
is.
That is a long one because it's very important.
It's going to start getting longer and longer here. Lancelot's story is 18 chapters. And then we've got Beaumains, also known as Sir Gareth of Orkney. His story is 35 chapters.
Gareth is good. I like Gareth.
Yeah. And then
he's I believe, brother of Gawaine.
Oh, okay.
Is Gawaine's youngest brother. I think his story is when he first gets knighted. I think he showed up before in some of the other stories, but he wasn't a knight yet.
I see. After him, we've got Sir Tristram's first story, which is 41 chapters. Then we've got book 9 it's a little weird. It's about Glacote Male Tale at first, but then it's about Sir Tristram for the rest.
Yep.
That's 44 chapters. Then we've got Sir Tristram's main story. 88 chapters.
Yeah. Sir Tristram sucks up a lot of Le Morte Arthur.
Yeah.
He is a very significant figure. As I'd mentioned in the previous episode, Sir Tristram is the character on which a lot of the criticisms of Romanticism rest, on the justification of his terrible behavior for the sake of passionate love.
And I'm excited to get into that when we get into that.
Yeah.
But I'm most looking forward to the next story.
Yeah, Lancelot. So good.
Lancelot's the knight people think of.
The knight.
The knight.
It really should be Galahad, but whatever.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap up. I'm not sure when we're going to be talking about Morte Arthur next. I've been since we've been adjusting to things, we haven't talked about it a lot, but you had baby Victor.
Yeah.
And you got another baby on the way.
We do. End of October, we'll be having another.
So I'm in the lineup. I'm not sure where this is going to fall, but I've been wedging Le Morte Arthur stories in between larger stories. So the next,
which is good. It's good to get a break from Arthur sometimes.
Yeah.
To something a little bit easier to digest.
Something a little more modern.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what you're going to be listening to next, but I hope you enjoy it.
Maybe Princess Bride. I don't know where it's in the lineup.
Princess Bride will have already happened by now.
Oh man, you've already got it. Oh, so good.
Yeah, so good.
Go watch the movie.
Yes, watch the movie.
There are few perfect movies made in this world.
All right.
That is one of them.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.